welcome to Tuesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. And today we are going to be looking at a variation of our old friend the Kakuro puzzle. I have not done a Kakuro for ages, and this puzzle is by Genomico, which I think is the pseudonym of Tom Groot Cormelink. I mention that because Mark has covered, I think, at least 2 or 3 of Tom's puzzles on the channel before. I think they've all been Sudoku though. And this is exciting because when we do feature non-Sudoku puzzles on the channel, we do try and make sure they're exceptionally good, because we know, a lot of people watch the channel to do Sudoku variants, and we think if we're showing you different things, it should be because there's a reason to do it. And let me tell you, the feedback that we've had from the testers on this puzzle, I mean, this is going to be extraordinary. I am so looking forward to trying it. As I say, I've not done a Kakuro for ages, this ought to be a very good. I mean, this was, by the way, this was for a recommendation originally from Glum Hippo, and we've featured a number of Glum Hippo's puzzles quite recently indeed. So big thanks to him, because he seems to have hit the jackpot with this one. Now, other things we're excited about at the moment, our new Killer Sudoku app is expected out. It's penciled for release, I think, on the 3rd of December, and I'm increasingly optimistic that we might hit that deadline. Mark and I are working really hard on it, I promise you that, and fingers crossed. We've also got Joke van Veenendaal's Kids Puzzle Hunt coming up free. That's going to be free on our Patreon page in the next couple of days, so check that out. It's also suitable for adults. We've got this new Sudoku puzzle hunt that I've had first sight of actually just this morning. Oh my goodness me, this looks incredible. It's going to make a heck of a Christmas present for those of you who sponsor the channel on Patreon. More on that very soon. Anyway, let's look at the rules of Genomico's puzzle. What have we got? This is interesting as well. This is not standard Kakuro, believe me. We've got fill some white cells using the digits 1 to 9, such that the sum of each block of digits equals the clues in the grey cells. Okay, so far so good. A clue above a diagonal applies to the block of digits to its right. A clue beneath the diagonal applies to the block of digits below it. And within a block, all digits are different. So let's pick an example here. So this 24 clue and 10, the 24 is referring to the cells, these cells here. So some combination of these cells needs to add to 24. Some combination of the cells below need to add to 10. Now within these cells here, you cannot repeat a digit. So if you decided this square was an 8, for example, you can't use another 8 now to make the 24 total work. What you can do is repeat a digit in the whole row. So this block here, which this has to add up to 5, you could put a 2 here, for example, and a 2 in the 24 sum. That's fine. You just have to make sure the digits are different within each block, within each sum that you're doing. So hopefully that's clear. It's very standard Kakuro. But obviously, if you study this for more than 2 seconds, you will realise that some of these totals seem a bit bizarre. For example, there is no way you can make this column add up to 17 if you have to fit a digit into every cell and all those digits have to be different. And that is because some cells remain empty in this puzzle, and all empty cells are traversed by a single closed loop that travels horizontally and vertically and does not cross or overlap itself. Well, that's different. Now, the testers have told me that they've given me some instructions. You can see we're in Pemper today. We're in Swaroop's fork of the Pemper interface, and that's because we need to draw line segments. And they've said that what I should do, and therefore probably what you should do, is go up to the tab. You see that says tab there. If you click tab, they say I need to have tick on surface. So it's tick on surface, that's already there. Tick on line normal, that's there. And tick on candidates, which is there. So have those 3 things ticked, and I think what that means is that the tab key now will filter between those options. So if I click tab, so now I've got a drag and drop line drawing tool, which is very handy, so I can draw lines. If I tab again, I got candidate, so that means I can enter in digits, which I'm going to need to do. And if I tab again, okay, I can shade in cells. I'm not sure why I need to shade in cells yet, but we shall see. So do have a go at this. This should be absolutely epic. I'm looking forward to it. The way to play, click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking and see how we go. And I'm immediately struck by the 0. There's loads of 0 clues everywhere. So that's telling us that we can't put a digit in these 3 cells. So if we can't put a digit in those 3 cells, they must be loop. Let's draw a loop. So no digit there. So again, that means the loop must do that. This 0 is saying the loop's got to come through that little alleyway, look. And I guess, yeah, let's have just a quick think about this 4 clue. Because if the 4 clue was just a solitary 4, what would you do with this square? This square would now have to be loop, and that would mean the loop would sort of come into this cell, but then couldn't get out again, and that's not allowed. We have to create a loop, not a line. So that is not a 4, and this must be, both of these cells must be filled with digits, so they must be 1 and 3. And the loop, oh, a loop, if I could actually click on the right thing, I'm not used to this interface, as you can see. I want to draw a loop, that must close in that cell. Now, what do we do next? My eyes are drawn to this 2 clue actually, because this 2 clue we can't repeat a 1 in the block. That's against the rules, so it must be a solitary 2. So if one of these 3 or 4 squares is a solitary 2, the other 3 squares must be loop segments. Well, we can see this bottom square can't possibly be a loop segment, because if it is, what's going to happen is the loop's going to go in there and then it won't get out again. So the bottom cell must be a number and therefore must be a 2. So that's a 2, and the rest of this is loop. Loop. That must be loop. The loop can't come up here because then it will close, and that will create a loop here, but then we'll have a second loop somewhere else, and there's only allowed to be 1 loop, so the loop must continue there. That's look, there's a 22 clue here. That's very interesting, because if you look down here, how many cells are empty and capable of containing digits in this column? Well, let's make sure I'm on the right one. Tab, right. This cell can be a number, that can be a number, and that can be a number. Now, 22 must be at least 3 digits, so it must be those 3 digits. Oh, this is probably why I need to shade, actually. If I shade, I'll shade them in green. So green will mean a cell has to contain a digit. Now, if these have to be digits, the loop cannot enter them, so the loop must continue, continue, continue. 0 in, 0 in this column means everything in this block here is a line segment, so the loop must do that and do that in order to make sure it takes those line segments. Okay, I'm seeing quite a few things now as I scan. The 5 here and the 22 overlap. Now, a 22 is either going to be 589 or 679. Well, it can't be 679 because that's going to give you a big problem in this square, because it's going to be more than 5. So this, in fact, must be 5, which means these 2 squares must be 8 and 9. This cell now has to be loop segment, so I need another colour then. I'll use purple maybe. So purple will mean a cell is not a number and it's definitely loop, but obviously I don't know how the loop moves through this square, so I'd rather just label it with a colour. And now we stare again. So maybe I should make cells that are numbers. I'll make them all green. That will be easier to scan. 5 clue in the bottom row. Well, that can't be a 3-digit clue, because 3 digits add up to at least 6. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. So this is either a 1-digit clue and just a 5 on its own, which it's going to be, or it's a 2-digit clue. Now, if it's a 2-digit clue, exactly one of these 3 squares will be empty and will contain loop. Well, whichever one that is, the loop will therefore be isolated. So that's not going to work. So this must be a 1-digit clue, and that means that the 1 digit must be in the cul-de-sac, otherwise the loop will go in the cul-de-sac, and it will be, again, not a loop. It will just be a line that ends. So this square is not only green, it's also am I on the right? No, I'm not. That's a 5. Oh my goodness, what on earth have I done there? I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to just put a 5 in that cell. And that means we can now draw a loop here, 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 here. 22. So far this is going very smoothly, because 22, look, we know that needs to be 3 cells. That's going to have to be those 3 cells. There are only 3 cells left there to be. So each one of these is green. We can fill in the options, I guess. They've got to be 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I'm going to put them in. 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. The loop must continue here. It must go up, and it mustn't close. If it closes, again, we're going to have 2 loops at least. So it's going to turn that way. Now that is a loop segment, so this could turn up. I'm not sure. But the thing is that it could be that, or it could be that. Well, it's one of those 2 things, but I don't know which one. Right, so I've got a 9 clue here. That could just be a single 9, or it could take both of those squares. 10 clue there. We've already got something considerable in that cell. 3 clue there. That could either be a 1 and a 2 or 3 on its own. 14 clue. 14 clue in 2 cells. So both of these cells have to be filled with digits. So they are both green. Let's go to green and do that. 24, 10. I'm not really seeing anything clever around those clues. Again, 3, 9, 5 here. That's a bit like the 5 down there, except that there's no cul-de-sac. So, can we do anything with that? We know it's not a 3-digit clue. And we know it's not, I suppose we know it's not a 3-digit clue, and we know it's not a 2-digit clue for the reasons that I mentioned down there. So it's a 1-digit clue, and that 1 digit can't be this one, because then that will be 2 loop ends that will have to go into those positions there, and they will both end. So this square is, in fact, we can label that. That's definitely purple. And that's interesting, because that means that the loop either does, it either does this. That's one option, or it does this. So the loop segment that escapes from this cell is always a downward loop segment. And that, of course, is unutterably useless. Bother. Okay. 0. A 0. That's not useless, so it does that. Now, I wondered then whether it could do that. Now it can, in theory. You can see I can now connect like that and not create 2 loops, but that doesn't work because the 1 clue, there's a 1 that needs to go in one of those 4 cells. So this configuration is wrong. I can't dip both of these lines down, so they must connect with each other. Now one of these cells must be a 1, and it can't be this one, because if we put 1 in this square here, now this cell here has to be strand the loop, which we don't want to do. So we mustn't do that. We must put the 1 there. We must make it, we must put the 1 there. We must make it green, not that. And we must do some looping. So the loop must come down here. This cell must be loop. The loop does a little wiggle and comes out there. Where it meets a 0 clue. Now I can do some purples. So both of those must be loop segments. Oh, good grief. Look, there's a 3 clue there just pointing at a cell. So that square is just a 3. And it's therefore green. Same here, 7. That's just a 7 clue. Oh, sorry about this. I should have noticed that straight away. It's 2 gimmies. 2 clue there. So exactly one of these 3 squares is a 2, and the other 2 cells are loop segments. So that can't... Yeah, okay, this has to be loop, because if that's a 2, that's a stranded loop segment. So that's purple. Let's put it in. It might matter. You never know. 12. We can do something simple with the 12. Let's do that simple thing. Is this square a loop? If it was, the loop would have to take all 3 of those squares, and this cell at the bottom would have to be a 12. That's not going to work, which means that square, this square here, has got to be not that, it's definitely green. Now that means this square is green, otherwise it's going to be a stranded loop segment. We've got a 3. Oh, I see. Right, let's look at the bottom, this bottom 2 by 2. Because, well, we have a choice now. It's not a very palatable choice, but it's a choice that we have. Does the loop come into either of these 2 squares? The answer is no, because if it does, it has to turn. And now the 3 clue can't be fulfilled, because it's not possible to put a digit in either of those cells. So if the loop can come into neither of these squares, those must both be green, which means that both of these must be green as well. So I can't just put a 3, for example, in this square and leave this square to be loop, because that loop segment will be isolated. 0, well, that needs to be loop, so the loop must do that. I might as well fill in the options, actually. That's 1, 2, that's 1, 2. 12 in 4 cells can be 1, 2, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 6. So I don't know what that one is yet. This 1 clue, look, so exactly one of those 5 cells just contains a 1. 30 clue, good grief. And some of these long clues that have no information in them at all. In fact, this row, there's the whole row, has no grey cells in it at all. Same is true of that row. Goodness. Okay. I'm not exactly sure what to look at now. I've probably missed a clue. 17 down here. So that's going to have loads of loop in it. What's the purple? Oh, so it can, oh yeah, it can come into the purple, can't it, this one? Now this is interesting. Now, if I was Mark, I guarantee I know what he would do with this situation down here. But if you look at these 2 loop segments, let me go into loop. There, I'm on loop. Now, you can see that basically there's 2 possible states of existence of the loop now. Either the loop turns up here, in which case you've got to be very careful not to close this loop off, because this green region here acts as a wall. It's as if it's grey. You can't put a loop segment on a green cell. So the loop would have to come up here, this would have to close, and then we'd have to think about how to keep these 2 loop segments apart, which would be very interesting actually. But having said all of that, the other thing I can see that is absolutely possible is that this doesn't turn up here and it goes through the passageway there. And that doesn't... right. That does not work. That does not work because of the 9 clue. Look at the 9 clue in this, whatever row that is. I don't know how many rows there are in this. I'm not going to count them. But a 9 clue can't be 4 cells long. So, it can be a maximum of 3 cells, and it's already got 2 cells in it. The reason it can't be 4 cells is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 adds to 10. A knowledge bomb from cracking the cryptic. Someone had the cheek on Twitter, incidentally, to say that in the new book we should have a page devoted to our knowledge bombs. I mean, I had to point out, it would need a chapter at least, possibly a whole book. So completely inappropriate. But now let's look at this. So if we did this, well, no, it's still the same. I was just wondering. I just miscalculated something about the 8, but it doesn't matter because this cell has to not be a loop segment. I think we can agree on that. So this would have to be green because otherwise it's a stranded loop. And now look, I've got 1, 2, 3 cells in my 9 clue, which means the loop must, hang on, go to loop. So I can't have any more digits in this row of the grid, which means everything else has to be loop, which means that has to be loop. Well, this 10 clue has a problem now because another knowledge bomb from cracking a cryptic, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 is not equal to 10. There, I've said it. Now, if I've said that, and I have, that means that this is huge because this now does not come along this passageway and it must turn upwards, which means it can't close here. So that turns upwards. This goes up. Don't close it. That goes up. It can't come into the cul-de-sac there. So that, this cell is a 9. We need to make sure this clue works, so it has to be the 9. It's the only cell there, and we must now extend the loop again. Now, hang on a moment. Now we've got to be really careful with this 8 clue, look. This 8 clue has to be 3 cells, because I can't make this square a loop segment, it will be a cul-de-sac, and I can't make that square a loop segment, or it will be a cul-de-sac. So you have to go green, green. And now, look, you've got the juxtaposition of a 22 clue and an 8 clue. So the central cell here is going to have to be a 5. It's the only way you can do it. So you're going to have to go 5, 1, 2. Those squares on the perimeter are going to have to be 8 and 9. This, look, the 10 clue is fixed. This again, this cannot be a loop segment because the loop will come in and won't be able to get out. So that square is green. But now, that's whatever I put in this cell will complete the 10 clue. Given this is an 8 or a 9, we can't have a 3-cell 10 clue. So these 2 cells at the bottom are loop. So the loop's going to do this sort of thing. And this square here is a 1 or a 2. And the 9 clue is finished. Because the 9 clue has got 3 greens. And I know 2 of them add up to 3. So the third one must be a 6. Go to candidates. 6. That means that the 12 clue is 6, 1, 2, 3. So this is a 1, 2, 3. This is a 1, 2, 3. This is, that's just a 3. There's a 1, 2 in the row. So we can get rid of 3 from those 2. How are we going to, have I made a mistake? Oh no, I see. I was wondering whether I had a uniqueness problem here, how I was going to disambiguate whether these were 1 and 2, but I think you can via that one, which means this one must be disambiguatable, which means this one must be disambiguatable. Oh, which means that one via this one. Good grief. So I think the way you end up disambiguating all this down here is via this 10 clue and whatever goes. You can see we're going to have one more digit in this 10 clue somewhere. And whatever it is will unwind the whole of the bottom of the grid. Everything else in the bottom of the grid, well, especially in this row, has to be purple. So I'm filling that in. All of those have to be purple because we've already filled our 9 in. Okay, sorry, I'm a bit, let me just try and work out what I need to do now. So now it looks to me like I've got to keep, let's press tab the right number of times, I've got to keep these loop segments apart because otherwise the loop will close. So I've got to do that at the same time as leaving enough room for the 10 clue to take one more digit. So if this comes up one more cell, I've broken the puzzle. Because now, in order to keep this and this apart, this has to turn in there and not touch. And now that the 10 clue could only add up to 8 or 9, which is not right. So this must turn. But the problem is that this, I think this can still do that and or that. So the 3 clue here is going to have a 3 in one of those two cells. But again, this can't turn up. If this turns up again, I run into exactly the same problem I had with the 10 clue, but in the 3 column now, because this would have to do this and not touch. So this must continue. This is very clever. This is very clever. Look at the 24 clue now. Now, ask the question, what does this line segment do? Can it dip downwards? The answer is no. The puzzle is now broken again because a 24 clue must be at least 3 digits long. So it must 7, 8 and 9 is the minimum we need for a 24 clue. Now, we look like we've got 3 cells here which could take the 7, 8 and 9, but this line segment needs to get out. So it's going to either take this square or both even. So there's just not enough white cells in this column if this turns down. So this does not turn down, which means this little alleyway is a green cell. So, not a purple cell, it's a green cell. Well, there's a few things I can see here, but one thing that I think is really interesting is now look at this 3 clue. Because I've got to keep these 2 line segments apart. Which means they've basically both got to, there's only 2 escapes. This is the best way to think about this. There's only 2 escapes from the region they're in. There's 2 gates out. There's that gate and there's this gate. Now if we don't use both of those gates, one of 2 things happens. If I use one of those gates, the other loop end must be stranded in this area. Well, that's no good. Or I can connect these up together. Now if I connect these up together, I've got a loop here in this section and I haven't connected all these loops. So both of these gates out must be used. So there must be a line segment there and there must be a line segment there. And now the 3 clue means we know where the 3 goes. It's got to go here. It's got to be green and we can extend the lines. So the lines extend like this. This 3 is looking at the 1, 3 pair over there. So that becomes a 1, that becomes a 3. Oh, lovely. And this 3 clue now is resolved because we know it's a solitary 3 because this line segment needs to connect over here to this one and the 3 can't go there because there's already a 3 in the block. So the 3 goes here, turn it green, draw the line. Don't break the 10 clue. This square can't. We need room for the 10 clue to work, so that's got to close the loop like this. This square has to be a 1 or a 2, and it has to be green. And good. It's still not disambiguate. I thought this was going to be the way that this disambiguated all of the bottom of the grid, but and it is because it's an 8 clue. Now the 8 clue's only got one more square that could be in it. Well, these 2 don't add up to 8. We can say that with certainty. So this square must be a number. And 3 cells that add to 8 must either be 1, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 5. Well, this one has a 3 in it. So this must be 1. Well, this square's got to be a 1 therefore, because it can't be a 2. And that must be the 4. And this 1 means that square is a 9, which means this square is an 8, this square is a 2, this square is a 1, this square is a 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And that is how we deal with all of this stuff down here. I mean, imagine setting this puzzle and creating these sort of these looping chains that get sorted out. It is some talent, isn't it? My goodness. This square, now this is a 4. This square, we don't want it to be a cul-de-sac, so it must be green. And that means it's 5, because that's what we need. We know there's a solitary 5 in that run, so we know the loop. Oh, whoopsie. We know the loop now must do that and drop down. Now, I don't want those to touch each other. So but look, this, I don't want these to touch, so I wanted this to turn down here, but I don't think it can. If this turns down, how do we make the 30 clue work? The answer is, we can in theory make the 30 clue work, but not in a good way. 30 must be at least 4 cells. 4 cells of numbers, because 6, 7, 8 and 9, which are the biggest numbers, add to 30. So we've only got 4 cells left in this column that could take those digits. But now look at the line. The loop segment is now in a complete dead end. It can't get out. These green cells acts as wall, and this is totally broken. So this is wrong, and that's good, because it means that this extends here, and now we must not connect it. So it must continue, and it still mustn't connect. Which means this must be a green cell now, so let's make that green. Oh, I've got a 24 clue here, which I looked at earlier in the context of whether the line could turn down, but now there's only 3 cells left that can be green, so they must all be green. And I'm actually going to label those, because I'm wondering whether we know what they are. That one can only be 8 or 9, which creates an 8-9 pair in that row. So the 14 clue, that must be a 5 or a 6 now, because it can't be 7, 8 or 9. It could never have been 7. That would have put 2 7s in the sum. But this one has no clue, so that's not useful. So now look at the 30 clue. We can still do work with the 30 clue, because if we go to loop, imagine this square is loop. Well, that would mean all of those, well, in fact, all of these squares would be loop, and there are not 4. We need 4 green cells in this column, and we certainly haven't got them. So this square must be green, and therefore that must be green, because we mustn't create a stranded loop end. Now let's try that again. Actually, so that's still broken. If the loop enters this cell, we still can't get 4 green cells in this column, so that's no good. We can put another green in. That square's also green, which means that's green. Oh, this puzzle is beautiful. It is just beautiful, because now the 9 clue is helpful. Is it possible that all 4 of these cells are green? Well, the answer is clearly no, because now the minimum this would add up to is 10. So there must be one loop segment in one of these cells, which means it must turn. So actually both of them must be absorbed, and that means that's got to continue. The 30 clue must be filled, so we need a 4th green cell, which must be that one. This is ridiculous. Which means the loop must continue. The 1 clue, look, because of the 9 clue, we said this had to be loop. So there's only one place the 1 clue can have a digit. That's that cell. That must be the 1. Now that might be important, because let's go to candidates. That's 1. That's 8. This square is a 6 now, because this 30 clue is made up of 6, 7, 8, and 9, and this can't be 7, 8, or 9. That's 6. That fixes the 14 clue. So that's a 7 or an 8 now. Where does the 9 go in the 30 clue? It's got to go not here. It's got to go there. It's the only place it can go. So this is a 7. 7. That's got to be 8. That's got to be 9. That's got to be 7. That fixes these ones over here. We've actually got lots of digits now in this one. We've got 6 digits. This square has to be 1, 2, or 4 because it can't be anything else. And therefore it's a 4, because if it's a 1 or a 2, that would put a 7 or an 8 into this square, which are not possible. So this must be 4, this must be 5. And everything is going quite nicely all of a sudden. So now we can do more loops. Loop must do this. This is a wall, so the loop's got to come all the way along here. This has got to get out, mustn't close the loop. This mustn't close, so that's got to connect there. Uh, 24 clue there, so that's going to need at least 3 of these cells are going to have to be green. So at least 3 of these cells have to be green. We've also got, don't know anything about this. We don't, I'm getting stuck here. There's no real way to, I think I keep scanning clues I've already used as well, which is not a sensible thing to do. Don't do that. Oh, that is interesting, look. We have a 4 and a 5 here, and that corresponds with the 4 and the 5 here. Ah, yeah, look, this is going to be important because this cell, let me go to, is it possible that this cell here or this cell here are loop? Well, if they're loop, the only way we can, if this was loop, the only way we can complete the 4 clue is to put a 4 in this square, which there can't be. So this square is not loop. And if it's not loop, it's green. And the same is true of this one, because we can't put a 5 here. Now that's now a cul-de-sac unless I make it green, so it must be a green. And this 17 clue is now getting interesting because I can't put very large digits into any of these 3. I mean, this one has a maximum value of 2. This one, if that's green, this would have a maximum value of 3. If this is green, that would have a maximum value of 4. So we definitely need more greens in this. Ah, yeah, okay, of course. So let's think about whether or not, is it possible any of these, is it possible that the loop does not turn down into any of these 3 squares? Of course, from the moment it turns, it must take all of these squares. So if any of these squares is in, then the loop does this. Now, if that's not the case, therefore, the loop would have to continue into those 2 squares if it doesn't come through this gap. Now, if it does that, the 17 is definitely broken because these 3 squares can't add up to enough, and there's no more space in the column to add up to 17. So actually we know that this must come down here. And therefore, this square is isolated and has to be green. And we can fill some of these in. So let's go to candidates. That's got to be 4. That's got to be 5. Ah, and the 24 clue. Yeah, oh, this is lovely. this loop segment here, how does it get out? Well, it's got to go somehow through there. And in doing that, it will use up one of these cells, at least one of them. Well, actually, it's got to be exactly one of them, otherwise the 24 clue's broken. The 24 clue needs at least 3 green cells. So exactly one of these cells, must be one of those two, is going to have to be a loop segment going straight upwards. Which means this is either a 7, 8 or a 9. But if it's a 7, 8 or a 9, it can't be higher than 7, because 8 plus 5 plus 4 is already 17, which is enough, and we'd already got to add the 1 and the 2 in. So this is 7, this is 1, this is definitely loop, therefore. Let's go to that. 17 is finished. That's stranded unless I do that. This is now isolated square, so that's got to be green. This can't be loop, because if this is loop, the loop takes 2 cells, and it mustn't do that because that'll break the 24 clue. So this is green. The loop turns, and now the loop, so now we do get to a choice. The loop's either going straight up there or it's doing that. One of those things is true. We're running out of clues to work with here. In fact, we've almost got all the digits now in this row, so one of these is probably going to be a 2 to make this row completed. So how do we tell what's going on here? We know so if it comes up here, it comes up there, then that would have to be a 2. This is all getting difficult. Actually, look, I've noticed, look, I can put in a loop segment. This is a corner, so it's going to have to do that. So if it does come up there, I think it breaks because of the 2 that I'm going to have to put there. Let's just look at this. I can almost see it, but I think if there's a 2 here, I think I have to put a 2 here as well, and that breaks. Let's look at this up. So if this is the way that we complete the puzzle, and that's by this coming up through this gap here, we now know for the 2 clue to be completed, we're going to have to put a 2 into this square. But now we have a real problem, because we have to get to this purple square. Now we can't get to the purple square by going upwards like this, because then this will come down and strand the loop, so that is no good at all. So we're going to have to wiggle to get the purple. We're going to have to turn up. We mustn't strand the loop, and now the loop will close, and we might think, hallelujah, we have done the puzzle. We have got a perfect loop here. It looks perfectly good, but we have not filled one square. This square needs to take a digit, and incredibly, and it is incredible, I mean, how do you build this into such a complicated puzzle that when you reach the final bit of it, the thing you've set up in the middle row causes a problem that allows you to resolve this uniquely? This cannot be the 2 it needs to be, and therefore this is broken and wrong. And if it's broken and wrong, we are going to change it. So we go back to this point, and this does not turn up, so we must continue. It must go up like this. Now we know that. Now we know lots of things. Firstly, we know this is green. Secondly, we know the loop must go up here. Oh, this is lovely. This is how the 9 works. What do we put into this cell? We know it's an 8 or a 9 for the 24 clue. Let's put that in. Well, given that we have 2 green cells in this column, we can't put 9 here. That's got to be 8. This has got to be 9. This square, therefore, has to be 1. And that tells us that this square has to be loop. So it disambiguates this intricacy. And if that has to be loop, we can close the loop like that. That means, oh no, if I broke it, are we going to end up with a 2 problem again? No, No, we're not. So in fact, this is what tells us how to close the loop. So now we have a choice. We can either close the loop immediately, like that. Well, that's going to be a problem because now these cells have got nothing we can put in them. Well, we could put the 2 here, actually, but then this cell would have no value. So we mustn't do that. We must keep them apart the maximum time. And we never get the 2 in this row because this 2 prevents it from being there. But that is all is forgiven. That is just an awesome finish. That turns green. And I think that's the solution. I'm just checking that have I coloured in everything that should be coloured. I'll get rid of the purples now so it looks a bit neater. Like that. Have I filled in all of the digits? I think every green cell has a number in it. The loop seems to close. I can't see why that's wrong. I think it's correct. And wow, I loved that. Let me know in the comments, A, whether you enjoyed it, B, whether you agree with me that if we can find puzzles of this quality, and well, that's very difficult to do. I'm very keen to showcase them on the channel because there really needs to be a wider audience for puzzles like this. This is quite stunning. And I absolutely loved it. And we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.